is to help ensure that the cracks that are happening don't happen, that we extend the possibility of early childhood education and stimulation to the entire cohort of Caribbean children who are in the 0 to 5 age range, but focusing in particular on the 0 to 3 and those who are in disadvantaged circumstances. Because within that wide population, there are those who can afford, who have access. What we are concerned about are those who do not have access and those who do not have the means to obtain access.
Now, this foundation, what is its name? And tell us how it's actually constructed, complete.
It's the Foundation for the Development of Caribbean Children. It was incorporated this year in Barbados. We are going to be building on the experience of the Caribbean Child Support Initiative that has been in existence for almost 10 years, has done some very successful innovations in early childhood development and education, has resulted in an expansion of opportunity for over 10,000 Caribbean children in 6 countries where we operate. And we are hoping that through the foundation we can, through our own interventions, with the support of the regional private sector and communities, bring that to at least 30,000 within a short period of time, and work with the governments of the region to ensure that we move to universal access for all children.
The board
We work very closely with UNICEF and other key agencies involved in child protection issues.
You had a board meeting here the last couple of days.
Yeah.
What did you focus on?
Well, that was our first formal board meeting, so the initial focus really was on putting our own house in order. As a foundation, we want to ensure that the issues of transparency and good corporate governance are there, because we're going to be a philanthropic organization, so we're hoping to raise as much money as we can to support the cause. I must tell you that, so what we did in this first board meeting was to ratify and approve instruments of governance having to do with the ethics policy that governs the performance of board members and staff of the foundation. No member of the board is remunerated for their services on the board, and we have some very high-level persons like Dr. Jules Ferdinand from St. Vincent and the Grenadines on the board. We also did our own pledges, so the government of Dominica did a pledge of $500 US as an initial sum to the formation of the foundation, and board members, every board member was asked to contribute at the very least $200 US towards that startup. So our work in this initial meeting was simply laying the groundwork for solid corporate governance practices, ensure that there's transparency in our procedures, so that when we go out to the corporate sector, we go out to the public, people understand that this is a regional body with serious integrity that is out to achieve those objectives.
There's a very interesting caveat about the composition of the board. Men.
No, they're not only men.
Mostly men.
Yeah, there are 2 women on the board. Jennifer Astafan of Dominica, who's the executive director of CARICAD.
That's 6 to 2.
And Rennie. Well, yes, but it's 6 to 2 numerically, but intellectually it's 50-50.
No, are you subscribing to the fact that he's downplaying men here? And I'm not sure if I should allow this.
I'm not downplaying men.
A problem that we say we have also in education.
I'm not downplaying men. I'm simply saying that the women on the board, I mean, if you count the executive director, Susan Branker, bring a lot of intellectual weight to the board, and these are, I mean, if you've met them, you know they are very feisty women. They're not over women.
Including Susan?
Yeah, including, and especially Susan. But what's important also is that if you look at the profile of the gender engagement, early childhood has always been a women's thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
And in many ways it has been, unfortunately in our patriarchal society, it has not been given the esteem that it deserves. Interestingly, in Finland, which has been consistently ranked for the last 10 years as the #1 country in the world for education, the most highly paid educators and the most qualified educators are in the early childhood sector because of their recognition of the importance of a solid foundation. So if you look at the gender profile, you see mainly women, and they have for years been doing excellent work. They've been lobbying governments, they've been calling for recognition, and nobody has listened. Now, maybe sometimes the gender thing can be turned on its head to work for effect. So we as, yes, the body is predominantly men, we are going to be the voices that will add to this crescendo to hopefully make change happen.
I want to make a slight shift to the side on the question of early childhood development is one thing, but I want to bring in the male element here, that we have consistently said, the University of the West Indies has shown that we're losing our males, and a lot of it has to do with the education system.
Well, again, it points back to what happens at the very critical ages and stages.
What might be different with males at those ages?
I frankly am not sure whether there's a gender difference in terms of capacity at that stage. It's all about how you are socialized and the degree of stimulation that you develop. But as we come down the years, certainly by the time you enter the formal education system, there's been a fair degree of stereotypical socialization that has happened. And the girls, for example, a girl in the home, and I'm just hypothesizing here based on the question you asked, a girl in the home, I think, would probably have more stimulation in terms of the domestic environment than the boy, because maybe the mother is washing, she's sweeping. I'm sure you've seen that baby girls imitating their mothers doing stuff. The boys, because of the gender bias in the society, will not imitate those activities. So what are they doing? They're fighting or they're watching television. So there's a much, I believe, a more limited range of stimulation for the boys.
Is there going to be something more of a focus on what happens to the boys in the whole approach? What has been roving caregivers? Has it been one size fits all?
It has been one size fits all, but based on research that we've done right here in the Caribbean about child rearing practices and how we are treating with the socialization experience with boys versus girls, there is the recognition that we really need to look more closely at how boys are being socialized in a Caribbean context. Christine Barrow did some work for us in Trinidad and Dominica about 4 or 5 years ago, and that was something that came through very clearly in her research, that the stimulation and certainly the child rearing experience for boys, was significantly different from girls, and that's something that needs to be looked at. And as Dr. Jules said, girls tend now more to be part of that environment that fosters and facilitates more stimulation and engagement, more conversation with the girls, whereas boys are left to do whatever they feel to do, which very often might not lend or certainly support their early development. So I think certainly from the foundation's perspective, it's something that we recognize. What we are not in a position to do is really, at this point, design interventions that can help us, to directly impact on that. But the knowledge is there, the research here in the Caribbean supports that, and it's something that, over time needs to be really addressed if we want to narrow this gap.
Actually, Jerry, you've just made